boy named David Gardner lives with his parents George and Helen in a cozy house near a hilly area. The family seems happy. Parents are minding their own business as David prepares to go to bed. His room is decorated in typical 80s style for a boy, with science fiction posters, a telescope by the window, and books about space that he loves to study. At this time at home, the traditional sounds of a quiet night are heard: the whispering of his parents behind the wall, the ticking of the clock, and the light wind outside the window. In the middle of the night, David is awakened by a strange rumbling outside the window. He runs over to the telescope to see what's wrong. Through the lens, he sees a bright glow illuminating the hill near his house, something that looks like a shooting star or meteorite. Amidst the silence of the night, the sight evokes a mixture of fear and curiosity in the boy. He watches as the light gradually fades, but senses that this is more than just an ordinary natural phenomenon. He tries to tell his mother about it, but she thinks it is just his imagination. His mother calms him down and he goes to sleep, but the strange flash in the sky keeps him awake. The next morning, things become even more disturbing. In the morning, David's father, George, goes to work at a nearby military base. There is access to a secret facility among the hills, and the locals know it. Before leaving, however, George decides to check out a strange place where his son says something unusual happened during the night. He doesn't mention it explicitly, but his caring tone implies that he is trying to keep the boy's interest and understand what might have gotten him so excited. When David goes to school, he notices that strange things are happening in the town. He sees people acting unusual. They look like they have become someone else. He gets the feeling that something is wrong. The streets that are usually filled with people and cars now look empty and lifeless. At one point, David sees his teacher, who literally changes before his eyes, as if she were someone else. Suspicions arise that this is due to that strange phenomenon in the sky. Meanwhile, David decides to find answers, and he returns home where he tells his mother about his suspicions. She does not believe him, thinking that this is just the result of stress from studying, but the boy himself continues to feel that something is wrong. Against this background, he decides to go to the local observation point to see what is behind this abnormal phenomenon. David heads to a vacant area where an old radio telescope once stood. He climbs up a cliff to survey the area. At his sight, something appears that confirms his worst fears. He sees an alien spaceship hiding behind the clouds and suddenly realizes that all these anomalies are the result of an invasion. He returns home to tell his mother, but her behavior becomes increasingly strange. She now behaves like a robot, showing no emotion. The next day, Helen decides to go to that very hill herself to find out what happened to her husband there. David wants to go with her, but his mother insists that he stay home. As time passes, she too returns home, but to the boy's horror, she begins to behave just as strangely as George. Both parents now hardly speak to him at all, and when they do say something, they do so inarticulately, without the warmth of before. Inwardly, David feels that these are no longer his parents. Shocked by what is happening, David tries to talk to a teacher at school to get someone to listen to him. His main ally is Nurse Linda Magnuson, who shows him genuine concern. David explains to her his suspicions. He is sure that the reason for the strange behavior of his parents is due to the fact that they were on the hill. Linda, hesitant at first, does not reject his story and agrees to help sort things out. Meanwhile, frightening events begin to occur at the school. One of the teachers, Mrs. McKelsh, exhibits illogical and sinister behavior. She becomes extremely irritable and abrupt with the students. And one day, David notices that she is eating frogs from the school terrarium. This infuriates him, and he becomes finally convinced that someone or something is taking over the people around him. The situation escalates when David learns that the infected people, including his parents, are getting organized. They guard the hill, behaving mechanically and disappearing suspiciously. David's fear grows more and more as he realizes that the invasion is already underway and the locals are turning into puppets. David and Linda manage to convince a bystander phone service worker that they're not making it up. He goes to check the hill himself, but no one else sees him. Linda then agrees to take David to a military base to report her sightings and involve the military in the investigation. The base command, including General Wilson, after some doubts, takes action. Soldiers begin setting up camp near the strange hill. Reconnaissance teams discover a network of underground tunnels that lead to a giant alien ship. David's asserted fear turns out to be justified. The alien invasion is real. Along with Linda and the military, he sees more and more people being dragged into the ship, after which they return as altered, with a metal implant in their necks that allows the aliens to control them. On the ship, David accidentally encounters one of the humans captured by the aliens. The military realizes that the implant is mind-controlling, shutting down the victim's will. Meanwhile, one of the soldiers shares his observations on the base technology associated with UFOs. The military descends into underground tunnels to capture the alien ship and deal with the threat. The tunnels strongly resemble an organic structure, as if they were not just structures but living walls. The oppressive fear of enclosed spaces is palpable here. Echoing footsteps, muffled voices, and unexpected rustling announce the presence of something unusual. David, along with the nurse Linda, decides to follow the military despite the danger. The boy feels that his presence matters, because he has noticed more than once how his intuition saves the situation. General Wilson and his team, all on full alert, move cautiously, realizing that the enemy may be lurking in front of them. Using non-human technology, as the soldiers go deeper into the ship, they encounter real aliens for the first time. These creatures appear to the viewer as strange life forms with large heads, shiny shells, and eerily mechanical movements. Among them is their leader, a massive creature resembling a brain with appendages. This master brain is clearly the central intelligence of the entire ship, controlling not only its subjects but also the captured humans. It is at this point that David notices his parents being led inside the ship. He tries to break through to them but is stopped by the military. Linda, being the gentler and more caring one, supports the boy, realizing how hard it is for him to see his parents in such a state. They go through an emotional moment together, watching the implantation of the controlling implant change them completely. The general decides to attack the ship to prevent the alien control from spreading further. However, the sabotage process is complicated by the aliens activating their defense systems, and the pulsing lights and sounds make it difficult for the military to orient themselves. Every movement seems dangerous, and the characters face an acute sense of insecurity. As the firefight begins, the aliens defend themselves by using energy pulses that strike the humans, immobilizing them. David, thanks to his intelligence and courage, finds himself in the center of events. He manages to get close to the main brain. Strong tension and music accompany this moment, emphasizing how much the boy has to fight fear. He screams, distracting the aliens, which allows the military to launch a coordinated strike. They plant explosives inside the ship to destroy both the aliens and their technology. Everyone hurries to get out of the tunnels before the explosion. The boy desperately tries to convince the general that his parents can still be saved. But there is no more time left. Helen and George, under the control of an implant, find themselves inside the dying ship. When the explosion occurs, the ship is destroyed along with the entire alien menace. The landscape is torn apart and the hill is destroyed. The danger seems to have passed. David returns home and wakes up in his room. It's as if everything he's been through was a terrible nightmare. He sees his parents again, as loving and caring as they were before the events that happened earlier. The boy sighs in relief. Then he hears a rumbling outside his window, the same sound that woke him up in the beginning. David runs over to the telescope. It's all happening again. The shining light illuminates the hill, and the sense of eerie inevitability overwhelms the boy once again. His scream echoes through the empty house.